Hi guys, welcome to episode number 10 of my horror game tutorial series. Today I'm going to show you how to open and close doors, and this time I'm first going to show you what we are going to do, and then I'll start with the tutorial so that you can have a look at what the result of this of today's episode will be. So if I go to the door 1 right here, you can see that I changed some things around and I added this door script, and we're going to make this. So what it does is, if I hop into play mode, look at the door, then exit and click on this open checkbox, you can see that the door opens up. And if I try to look at the door while clicking on this box, you can see it also closes again. So this is what we're going to do for in this episode, and I hope you enjoy. So I'll see you in just a second. So guys, now we are inside the Unity editor where we left off. Actually, I did something off camera. I did this off camera because otherwise this tutorial would be very long and I want to shorten down my videos a bit. So what I did was, let me show you. First I need to do this, and now I'm going to show you what I did. So first of all, I grabbed all the door models and put them outside of the apartment game object right here, so that we can see them individually. After that, I renamed this one to door_01_graphics, because now this will only be the graphics. So I removed the mesh collider. So this is right now, this is actually just graphics. Then I right clicked and I created an empty object and called this door_1. Then I dragged it outside again, okay, and I set the scale to 1 and the rotation to 0. This is very important because otherwise the script we are going to write won't work. And then we're going to grab the door_1 graphics and put it into this new empty game object. So now you can see nothing has changed, except the fact that the rotation and the scale are both set to 0 on the rotation and 1 on the scale. After that, we're going to add a box collider, and I'm just going to paste in the component values. These are the values I use for my door. So as you can see, just adjust the collider so that it fits the door, okay? And now that we have done this, we're going to grab all the doors. Right here you can do this by clicking on one and then shift clicking the last one. Right click in the scripts folder, create, and then C# script, and we're going to call this door. And then, oh, it deselected them, so now select them again, and then drag on the door script. So now it's applied to all these different doors. And then double click on the door script, and Visual Studio or Model Developer will open up. Again, it's going to take some time, so don't worry. Yeah, and now it opened up. So first, let me show you what the script is actually going to do. So if we click on the door 1 right here in the hierarchy, and we rotate the door on the y-axis, you can see the number up here. You can see when I rotate it to about, let's say, 90 degrees, so I put it to 90 degrees, you can see that the door opened completely and that I could walk in right now. And if I put it back to 0, you can see the door is closed, and if I put it to -0, the door opens in the other direction. we're going to use this to open and close the door. We're not going to use any animations for this. So what the script is going to do, it is gradually rotating the door over some time to a target rotation. Okay, so let's start. The first thing we want to have is a variable. It's a public boolean open, and I'm going to set it to false. With this variable we are going to check if the door is opened or closed. So if it gets to set to true, the door will open, and if if open gets set to false, the door will close again. So we can write checks for is for saving the door state. After that, we're going to add a float, a public float. A float is a decimal number. That means that's a number with a comma, so it's like with decimal numbers, so it's like 5.320 something. Okay, so just write public float, and this is going to be the door open angle. So this is the angle at which the door will be opened. As we saw in a few seconds ago, the angle at which the door was completely open was 90 degrees. So I'm going to default this to 90 degrees. And something special about the float numbers is that you have to write an F after the number, because otherwise Unity won't recognize this number as a float, and this gives you some errors. And it's really annoying, especially if you're a beginner and this isn't and if you go through your code and you just can't figure out what's wrong with your code. It may be that you forgot an F after the number if the variable is actually a float, and then end it with a semicolon. Of course, we are also going to need a closed angle, so we're writing public float door closed angle, and this angle is 0 degree. After that we're going to need another float, so this is public float smooth. I'm going to default this to 2f. So the smooth is actually we're going to use a Unity method called quaternion.slurp, and this method needs a variable to smooth out the rotation. In other words, you can say this is the time it takes for the door to go from its current rotation to the target rotation. That means if this number is really small, it will be very slow, and if the number is really high, it will be very fast. So you could also write this is the speed of the rotation. By the way, if you forgot, you can make a comment by writing a double slash. Okay? And then that are all variables for now. We don't need the start method right here, so just delete it. And we're going to write our own. We're going to write void. Actually, we want a public void. A public void is pretty much a method that can be called by other scripts. This sounds complicated now, but it's actually a pretty cool thing, because later on we're going to make a script called the interaction script, and this interaction script would check if we are looking at the door, and if we do and press a key, this method will be called, and because it's public it can be called, and then the door will open. So this public void is going to be called change door state, and now the next thing we're going to write is looking pretty funny in my opinion, but it makes a lot of sense. We're going to write open is equal to exclamation mark open. So what does this mean? the exclamation mark could also you could also say the opposite of. So the variable open is going to be the opposite of the variable open. That still sounds confusing, so what does this mean? It means that if, for example, the door, so if open is equal to false in the beginning of the game, for example, and change door state is called, then open, which is currently false, is equal to the opposite of false, which is true. So the door is open, right? And if the door is open, so if open is equal to true, then it will be the opposite of true, which is false, and then the door will close again. So this little line just switches between open and closed, pretty much. And now we go into the update method. And the first thing we're going to do is we check for we check if the door is open. So we're going to write open. You could also write if open is equal to true. Can't type today. Okay, so you could also write if open is equal to true. But you don't need to do this. You can just write if open. So in here we are going to open the door. And the code is going to be a little bit difficult to understand, but I'm trying my best to explain it as much as I can. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to make a new variable. And this variable will be of type quaternion. So a quaternion is actually a pretty complicated thing. It is somewhat of a 4-dimensional number. Yeah, I know it sounds really complicated, and it actually is really complicated. But don't worry, you don't have to understand all the maths behind it, because to be honest, I also don't understand all the math behind the quaternion. You just have to know that quaternions are used to rotate stuff in 3D space. And because we want to rotate the door, and our game is nothing else than a three-dimensional coordinate system, we're going to use this quaternion. So we're writing quaternion, and this is going to be the target rotation open, and this is going to be equal to quaternion.Euler, and then 0, comma, door open angle, comma, 0. So this right here just applies a rotation to sets the rotation of this target rotation open. So if we go back into Unity, you can see that at the rotation we have an X rotation, which is currently 0, we have a Y rotation, and we have a Z rotation, right? So we want the rotation on the X to be 0, we want the rotation on the Z to be 0. But we want to change the rotation on the Y, because in this way we are going to open and close the door. So we leave the rotation here at the X at 0 and at the Z at 0. But the Y rotation is going to be the door open angle rotation, which is currently 90 degrees. Okay? And now we are going to rotate the door. So transform dot local rotation, and the local rotation is going to be quaternion dot slurp. Slurp is a pretty funny word in my opinion. So what slurp does, it rotates from one rotation to another in a certain amount of time. So we want to rotate from the current position, which is transform dot local position, local rotation, I'm sorry. So we are going to rotate from the local rotation to the target rotation open. And we are going to do this in smooth times time time.delta time, and then finish off with a semicolon. So we are going to rotate from the local rotation to the target rotation open, and then we are going to need smooth times time.delta time. The times.delta time means that this function is frame rate independent. That's a good thing, because otherwise the update method is called once every frame, as it says up here, right? Now imagine if you have a very good PC and your computer has, when playing the game, you have like 300 frames per second. So this code will be executed 300 times a second, and if you have a very slow computer, the game might run at, let's say, 30 FPS. So this will only be called 30 times a second. And by multiplying it by time.delta time, which is the time between two frames, this will be completely frame rate independent. So the door will open the same distance in the same time on a 30 FPS computer and on a 130 FPS computer. And it's always important that if you do any kind of motion or movement in the update method, you always have to multiply it by time.delta time, because otherwise you will have a frame rate dependent game, which is quite a bad thing. So now we opened the door, but what if the door is already opened and we want to close it again? Well, then we have to do else. So if open, blah blah blah. So if open is equal to true, then do else. So I'm sorry, if it's not, then else. We're just going to grab this right here, copy, because we are lazy, we don't want to write this stuff again. Save. And then we go here. So this is going to be the target rotation closed. Save. We're going to change this to door closed angle. And then we're going to grab this, copy it, and paste it in there. And now save. And now if we go back to Unity, I'm just going to check that this is disabled. And if I now press play and look at the door and click on open right here, so I set this to true, you can see that the door opened. And now this is working with every other door. And yeah, so that's about it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial I'm probably going to show you how to interact with the door so that the player can open the door himself and doesn't have to install Unity and install your game files. Okay, that was a bad joke. But I'm giving you two homeworks. The first homework is going to be pretty simple, and the second homework is going to be a little bit more difficult. So the first homework is going to be, you're pretty much going to do the same thing as you did with the piano. You're going to add an audio source to the doors, and then I want you to play an audio clip whenever the door is opened or closed. You can search for your own opening and closing sound, or you could use the sound effect I have in my horror game tutorial folder that I provided you. And the second the second homework is quite difficult and challenging, but if you manage to do this, it will be a great achievement. So I want you to check if the player is standing on this side of the door or standing on this side of the door, and then if open is set to true, if the player is standing here, I want the door to open in this direction, and if the player is standing here, I want the door to open in this direction. Okay? If you manage to do this, you have achieved something great, because this is quite difficult. So I'm giving you a little hint. You are going to use triggers again, like the piano scare trigger right here. And the rest is up to you to figure out. And don't worry, I'm going to show you how it's done in another video. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, leave a comment in the comment section below. Also, please leave a like and consider subscribing to stay up to date. And yeah, thanks for watching. So until next time, bye guys.